question for each of us as we get to co-create this together. Uh, what's interesting today? What's interesting in this, all of this? What's interesting? It's exciting. What's your next aha? Meryl, what's here for you today? It's like to come on a Saturday and play with us. What enlivens that? What's the interest, the curiosity?
I think it's twofold. First, I really appreciated the email because I've definitely been having a lot of sort of conflict stuff that I want to bring sort of my new awareness of self and kind of how I want to be to. But right now, what's interesting and exciting is that I actually showed up. Normally, I'd be like, yeah, I think I'm going to do it. And then I would just be sitting and reading and drinking coffee, and like maybe not quite get there. So I'm excited. I just got here.
Is there anything curious? Is there anything for us that like what is there a voice that's like, oh, I'm not really sure if I want to when we think about coming on a Zoom like this? Is it like a vulnerability? Is it like, God, an hour and a half or an hour to be here on a Saturday? Or I don't know if I want to touch the things that we touch. I'm curious if there's a voice like that that comes up or what that voice might be in your system, Meryl.
You know, it's funny. I don't think I so much have that voice. I feel like the thing that gets me here is very optimistic and feels like, yeah, this is the path. I almost have the opposite where I have a big part of me that my default condition is to like defend and curl up and snuggle and not do anything. So I it's taking me a while to kind of slowly kind of come out of that state more often. It's very defensive and very like exhausted, and that's how I spend a lot of my time.
Wow. And just when I hear that, well, I'll keep going around here, but as I hear that, the like the curled up, like there's also it feels like I can find something attractive in that. I can feel an appealingness to that place of just being curled up and protected and I forget if this is a Sarah word. Someone the other day, someone was talking about cozy. It was like this coziness. Is there a, do you find a yumminess in that as well, Meryl? That place.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then I overstay my welcome. It's like it moves from yumminess and cozy to feeling like disconnected and like, oh my gosh, there's so many other things I want to do with my life, but I just keep reverting to like, nope, I just need to be cozy and protect myself.
I would love, and maybe we can taste some of that today. What you're describing, maybe we can taste that as self, as beingness, because it's like what Meryl's describing. It sounds so wonderful, this coziness, this yummy coziness. And it's like, what is when we really fall into self, when we know this intrinsic nature, is it possible that it resembles or can have a feeling of what Meryl's pointing to? Um, and I loved it. But what I was also hearing, Meryl, was that there's an achiever or want or clarity. Like, yeah, I'll really, you said something about bringing self to what's here, bringing self to what's this experience of life. Anything else real quick, Meryl?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, we're kicking it off. This might be really interesting today. If it's probably going to be the four of us. And that means we get to really play and dive and explore and dance together. Awesome. Awesome. Uh, Golly, what's here? It's just the four of us. What's here for you? What's here? What brings you here? What's interesting? What's happening? What's alive?
Well, I woke up very excited to be here to see some familiar faces and maybe some new faces that I did both. Yeah, I was excited. I'm still am. Always in these meetings, I learn. I get excited to hear everyone to learn something. It's very Yeah, I love these meetings. I still do.
Is there anything, just so that we can like fully include all of us here? And is there anything, are there any buts in your system? Are there any difficulties right now, particular difficulty that we label as a part, thought, feeling, or sensation, like a resistance to something that is here that you would like to throw into the equation, throw into the pot with us today? Anything?
Really, no. I love being here. I'm well, in the morning, my cat came to me, didn't wouldn't let me like leave the bed. She wanted to cuddle with me, and I thought, well, maybe if that is it, I won't resist. But then, right at time, she left. So,
Oh, but
yeah.
not even just about this, just for, because as we, we're gonna just dive in and explore together, and it's just what is IFS, but the relationship between self and parts, between this intrinsic fulfillment and well-being and love that we are, and any kind of resistance or wants or preferences that come up that create stress, anxiety in our systems, and just to invite all of that to be here. If there's anything, any parts, anything you'd like to put a spotlight on. And then there's this. My life is this, except for when I have to do the laundry, or gosh, it's tax season, or it's really cold where I live right now, and it's like cold out. Anything, any resistance is just the idea that everything gets to be included. All of us gets to be included and celebrated. Just as Meryl was sharing, this is part that just wants to stay in the coziness. But it just is, yeah. If there's anything, and just as we explore today, everything is welcomed. Anything else? Anything else, Goldie?
No, that's it.
Oh, hmm. And before we move to Sarah, just for all of us, what's it like being here? Like Goldie was saying, these faces, familiar new faces. We're not alone. This connectedness, both through experience of connecting and enjoying, and then this intrinsic connectedness that's here. So like as we're being here on the Saturday together, how would you describe like your experience right now? What's it like to be you? Like, is it just, oh, there's just presence, there's peace, there's love, or there's excitement, or there's some fear, or there's thinking about my day and thinking about things I need to do, or thinking about those parts that arise in me? What's it like to be you right now? How are you?
Optimistic and terrified.
Oh, Meryl, will you say, give us a little bit more? That is so rich. We don't want to, optimistic and terrified. What would the next sentence be about that?
Um, well, you kept asking about resistance, and I was like, but then as you were speaking to Coley, I was like, oh yeah. Um, uh, I don't even realize it until you ask questions like that, how much of me is sort of like, like I'm going to be really open. I'm here a little bit as an observer. That's not really true, but like part of me feels that way. And part of me feels really terrified that if I really were open and connected, that somehow I'd blow my life up, that I would be out of like a safe stasis.
Isn't it wonderful how we take care of ourselves? It's like, whoa, I don't need to get close to that. I don't need to even play with the sense of blowing my life out, the floor falling out. We get these beautiful
Mhm.
parts, these aspects of us. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna, maybe I'll keep a little distance sometimes when it gets too uncomfortable, or I won't speak too much. And it's just the idea of celebrating that. We get to celebrate this that takes care of us. And then just optimistic and terrified. The terrified, there's also perhaps such yumminess there in this, if we're when we can taste this, being fascinated by how life is moving in us. Like, isn't it fascinating what we're hearing from Meryl, that there's wow, there's concern that this, I might go too far into some of this and my things could blow up, or I could touch things that are really uncomfortable. Like, can that just be fascinated with that? If we can, sometimes it takes a real zooming out to be able to find that, like, really enjoyment of, or curiosity or welcoming of what's here, like the theater of us. Like, for all of us, when we hear Meryl speak of, and then there's some, oh, I should pause for just a minute, because as we're using words like terror, and do my little housekeeping real quick. And I think Meryl, you've heard this before too. Just that I'm I'm a mediator. I'm not a psychotherapist, so it's not the EIFS of psychotherapy. This really is for me, friends coming together and exploring together. And if you're good with that, and good being kind of responsible for your own journey, I'm supposed to ask this every time. If I can just get a thumbs up, please. And then, thank you. And the other thing is, I've got this being recorded because, I mean, there are only four of us here today, and it's like it's nice making it available, pieces of it, or sometimes all of it, to people who are interested in this. But only my square, only my image is ever shared, never yours. However, the audio that you speak could be shared in this when it is shared electronically. And so, however, we want everybody to be comfortable. And so, if there's time you're like, I'm not sure if I want to do that, just let me know when you're a co-host, and then you click pause when you're speaking something that you might not want to be shared. And at the end, if there's anything that you said, it's like, whoa, I'm not sure with what I just said about terror, if I'm wanting that, just let me know at the end and I can delete it. My preference is to put the pause thing because it's a lot easier for me. Um, is everybody good with that? If I could get a thumbs up from you, please. Awesome, awesome. So again, just the theater of life, the theater of us. It's like perhaps we're all going to theater right now. We're at this grand performance, and our parts are the performers, and perhaps all of our parts are on stage right now, and we're just enjoying Meryl's. And Meryl, I'm not going to put you on the spot anymore. We'll shift to Sarah, but just the, I hope you can see like the enjoyment of, like, when you speak of a part of some terror or fear about what might be touched. For me, you were facilitating us all in that, because if we can all find something that we're scared, like, Byron Katie calls it the underworld. In IFS, we call them the exiles, these vulnerable aspects of us that were just too much to be with when we were younger. And for some of us, and for me, there's still a lot of that underneath. And there's some that's like, no way am I going to touch that. You're asking me to go back with that, when this woman that I was in love with broke up with me and what that did to me, or when bullies said some things to me. It's like, there's some things I'm just not available. It's like, I'm not going there. Not now. Eventually, what happens is it does feel safe for that too, for us to be with that. All right. Thank you so much, Meryl. Sarah, how's life moving in you today?
Hi, and oh, it's so good to see you, Sid, always. And I was happy to see Goalie as well. And um, yeah, I had a part of me that was really happy to see old friends, and a part of me that was afraid of seeing, oh, there's a new person. There's Meryl. I don't remember Meryl. So yeah, so there's the combination of these two parts, the parts that are happy to see familiar faces, and the part that afraid of new faces. And yeah, and today I wish my chatterbox is here, because it's just the four of us and we have all of this time. But I don't have much going on inside today. I feel like just so peaceful and calm. Um, a sleepy part is kind of taken over. Um, yeah, it's just a quiet day.
Just a quiet day. Where does that take us when we hear Sarah say that? Just a quiet day. Do we have that inside? Like, what's most like that inside us? Just a quiet day. Is it just like an okayness, a peace, a flow, an ease, a relaxation, just being here? What does that mean? How does that translate for each of us? Just a quiet day. Quiet day. And then we can't skip over how she started, which is just the sense of the difference in her system of when she sees an old friend, when we see an old friend that's like safe, and we the old friends that we know just they just adore her. I mean, Goalie and I see Sarah, and it's like, yeah, Sarah. And it is like the parts of us that respond to that. Oh, it feels safe. I'm being seen, recognized, appreciated for who I am. Wow, really, all of me is welcomed here and being loved. Perhaps that is how it's received. And then we see someone that that is new to us. And there's both, I'm guessing, the enthusiasm, Meryl, oh my God, we barely know her. What's she gonna bring? And also a part that's like, wow, is this safe? When Sarah says, and there's some kind of afraidness of new faces. And not just here, but just in our lives to notice when we walk into a room, and if it's a family or if it's new faces, the parts that come up say, well, we need to be careful here. I'm not sure. So when we hear that part in Sarah, kind of afraid of new faces, can we see the innocence of that part? We see the innocence of that part. Can we see how that part is doing its best to take care of her? To help her know that this is safe to take care of her. Even if it's like, oh, Sid, I really don't have, I don't, whatever it is, however it takes care of her, can we enjoy that? And even like love that part is perhaps even like a superhero in our system in Sarah as we see this in her. And then just to make it to push the edge, what's it like when we touch that and when we find that part in our own system? When we touch that part that's like, okay, we need to be careful. New faces. Is that part similarly, can we see the innocence of that in us? How it's looking after us? And can it be enjoyed in our own system? Perhaps even adored. And lastly, with that, do you have a part that comes up and says it shouldn't be here? I shouldn't have these reservations. I shouldn't have some fear that comes up regarding new faces and people I don't know. And can that be enjoyed as well? Anything else, Sarah?
That part. Judgy part. The part that's judging me. You shouldn't be afraid. Um, yeah, I see that part now.
Can you see the sweetness of it about how it's there to take care of you? So where do we want to go today with the four of us? Because I had sent out this email that I sent to you, and this is what we did yesterday. Yesterday was because what I find that's really cool as we go deeper, as we go into this EIFS, as we go into this sense of getting to know self and coming from self, like when we meet our parts from self, right? When a part says you're doing this wrong, or something should be different, or I don't like this, or I don't like you, I don't like myself. When we have those parts and we notice when the parts are being met by self, right? They're just met by, there's this welcoming, there's this appreciation, there's this love, there's this nurture, there's this care. And what we find is that, wow, wait a minute, I'm becoming an amazing peacemaker. Because inside me, whatever comes up, our system, as it learns more and more, as it becomes what in Dick's language and IFS self-led, like self is what meets the part. This is like the essence of of mediators and peacemakers. This is what's happening internally as the parts are coming up, as a no is coming up, it's just met by this welcoming and love of it. And where this is crazy fun is it translates directly out into the world. So as we encounter people that say no, and they say, you're a jerk, or you shouldn't have done that, or you shouldn't drive that way. As we experience whatever resistance, no aggression, judgment from others, what happens is this self leadership that we have inside, it just goes outside too, because when we start hearing their parts. Oh, this one is wanting this. It's really wanting fairness, connection, appreciation, care. We hear their parts, and we know the discernment gets clear between, are we meeting them from another part? Oh, I need to resolve this, or this person's a jerk for saying that, or he shouldn't say this, or I can fix this, or are we meeting it from self? And as our system moves more and more to self, we discover, holy smokes, I am an incredible peacemaker. I'm an incredible mediator, and I'm just being me. So recently I've gotten excited about that. And so one way we can go today is we can throw out whatever is real in conflict, inside or outside, and we can be with that as a group in this way. Or the floor is completely open. And we also have, Meryl, if you don't know Goldie or Sarah very well, I've forgotten if they were here during your two others. Sarah, they were. You have seen them
I've
before.
seen each of you at least once. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yay! Because because I really do believe if Sarah is that Sarah is going to be one of the greats in this IFS thing if she chooses to follow this. And somehow there's something so just the way she's able to speak for her system. I've rarely heard that in
Oh,
that kind of
thank you.
way. And yeah, and then my friend Goalie, I just want to share what we have here to play with. And then we've got Goalie, who in 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 effortless IFS we speak of three views, and the the third one we call Rumi's field, where this sense of all is of self. And this is where Rumi's field says, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there, and separation ends, and it's just love. And that's my experience of where Goalie lives. And she's found that place, and for a lot of this, and she speaks for it. And it's like and so there's so much we can play with today. What's interesting? What's alive for you guys? Which direction do we want to go? And especially if there's something that's just like a real pain in our systems or anything, let's hear.
I was definitely attracted to the way you phrased the email, because I definitely have been feeling a lot of internal conflict, in part about avoiding external conflict. And I'm not super great at being that mediator. I've found that self-led nature in many areas of my life, but there are a few areas where it ends up being just like a fray where everybody's just like throwing punches, and I can't seem to, calm it down. A lot of tension. So
Thank you. Wasn't that cool? Just hearing Meryl's experience. Could we enjoy it? Could we enjoy hearing about like where there's a sense of the fray? And we can imagine when we're in a fray like that, right? If we were in lots of, be it external or internal, where it can be really difficult to have it just being met by self because we have all these parts that are being evoked by the fray. Thank you, Meryl. That was gorgeous. What about you guys for Goalie and Sarah? I know Sarah, it's just what was your word? It's just calm, calm. It's calm today. It's just calm. In that calmness, is there any direction you'd like to go? Even if you place you want to take us, or you just kind of let's just go for the ride. What's it feeling like today?
Um, well, I feel like I'll just go with the flow. Yeah, I just feel peaceful. And yeah, well, there was a part that was a little bit sad not to see some friends that I invited to be here today.
Oh,
Yeah, I remembered that. And they said they would be, but then they didn't show up. So yeah, there was that part that was sad. Oh, they're not here. Did they miss it? Did they forget? Something maybe came up. Did they get the time wrong? Like, yeah, so I had these thoughts come up at some point.
mm,
Um, yeah.
mm. About that. Just before we go to Goalie here, it's like sense of some disappointment. Some, oh, this could have been even richer if my friends were here. We were able to connect and play together in this and dive in together. As we hear that part of Sarah, is there just, can we enjoy that? Can we have like, it's beyond compassion, it's just the enjoyment of that part of her. And then at the same time, can we see this in Sarah that's untouched by that? This that is this presence, this calmness, this peace, this just here-ness, here. And in this just here, that there's nothing missing. Because we speak of self sometimes as this that can't be diminished or enhanced. See if you can see that in Sarah. This that can't be diminished or enhanced. Even if all of her very best friends were here, even if we were throwing a birthday party for Sarah and everybody brought gifts and her favorite cake, it's like something in her that can't be enhanced or diminished. See if you can see that. While enjoying the part that says, I wish my friends were here. That would be fun. All right. And then I'm going to be a little mean here. This is the hard part. It's like, okay, so if we're looking at Sarah's square, what if we look at our own square? Can we glimpse this? Can we glimpse the self? Can we glimpse being, essence, whatever your word is this for this, whatever the nature is for you of this that doesn't come and go? Can we see this? It can't be diminished. Even if my world blew up, even if what we're scared, whatever we're most scared of that could happen in our systems, we all have that. Even if that happened, it's something that can't be diminished nor enhanced. And maybe we'll probably pause here for a minute and maybe see what your word is for that. What would your descriptive word be for that? Is it stillness? Is it peace? Is it love? Is it presence, awareness, okayness, connectedness? What would your word be for each of us? And I really want to honor what Meryl said as far as it's like the carefulness in our system, the taking care of ourselves. And if any of this is ever touching one of those, touching something like a little yellow light, warning light comes on, or a red light, that's what we're most interested in. Then, like, forget everything we're talking about, and you can tell us about the yellow light or the red light part, or you can just be like, I pass, I want to pass. So, back to the question, what's your word? What's your descriptive of this? Sarah, what would your word be?
Peace. Yeah.
And as we hear Sarah's word, peace, what's most like peace that's here now in each of us, as each of us? Peace. Thanks, Sarah. Golly, what's your word?
It's familiarity, it's intimacy, yeah, like safety. I don't know. Yeah.
Did you say intimacy and safety? Is that what you said?
Yes, yes, and something very familiar, very loving. And
So before we even go to Goli's words, why don't we take a shortcut? Could we just, it's like a tuning fork, like a piano key, as if what she just shared is a resonance. What's most like that resonance here in you as you hear her, as you feel her speak of intimacy, this safety, this that is very, so very familiar and loving. Is it like to feel that? it like to be that? What's most like that which is here in each of us? This intimacy, this safety, this familiar, this loving. And then, is there anything you have to do for that to be here? Anything you have to do for this self, this beingness, this whatever your word is, familiarity, loving, safety, intimacy, or is it just here?
And for me, the only thing is not doing anything. It's just be myself and like at least for a second forget about everything outward and come back to myself to yeah um, yeah.
And with what Goldie's sharing, there was a sense of almost like a choice as far as where the attention is. I'm going to kind of forget about those things and just be what's here. This leads me to a question. What's most interesting? Because often we'll discern this as like the foreground and background, and sometimes play like the background is the self, this beingness, and the foreground is the weather, the parts that come and go. What's most interesting for you? Background, foreground, the self, or the part?
You're asking everyone, right?
Yeah, for everyone, that question. What's most interesting? Where does your attention go? And then what's most fulfilling? Does it, most of us, it goes back and forth as far as fulfillment, where we're looking for fulfillment. Oh, wow, when I get that new car, when I get to be with my friends, or, and then there's the fulfillment of the beingness. Does it seem like it goes back and forth to you and like what's most fulfilling, or is it like clear? No, it's clear self is most fulfilling, or like, yeah, self's okay, but really, like what I'm doing with my friends and the people and my partner, that's really where the, like, but however it plays. And can this be, last question, then we'll go to Meryl. Can this be fascinating? Like, can this be fascinating? Like how it plays in us? What's most interesting? What's most fulfilling? Where's my attention? Can there be like an innocent fascination with how this is moving in our persons? How you doing, Meryl? How's it going?
Oh, fine. Um, I will cry. Don't don't worry about that. I feel like whenever I come to one of these meetings, that's what ends up happening, just because I sort of get to a place I'm not usually in, and it's sort of just a relief. Um, my words were sort of being held and belonging.
Being held and belonging. Where does how do we each make sense of those words? With being held and belonging. How does that translate? Like in Sarah with her
Yeah.
arms. Hey, how does that translate? Being held and belonging. And then this is where it gets a little tricky. Can we find the being held and belonging when it's not conditioned on an experience? It's not conditioned on who we're with or the people in our lives. Being held and belonging is just intrinsic to our nature, this essence of self. How do you do with that, Meryl?
You know, you asked the question about which is more interesting, and when Sarah was speaking, I definitely sort of got this image, both like of her, but then also for myself of when she talked about the part that's afraid of new faces that um I almost see like for myself as like this sort of like central like this just like loving grandmother or something who is just sitting back and enjoying and knows everything's going to be okay. And then this little part that like goes out and, kind of checks out this meeting and is like, oh, like new people scared and comes run back to my skirts, and I can kind of like pat her on the head. And I was imagining Sarah doing that, like that sort of spontaneously came into my mind. And I do see how even these scared parts or these angry parts, when I'm in sort of a centered space, they're sort of lovely, they're sort of like the stuff of life. Like I'm a great aunt and my sister's granddaughter coming into our lives has just it just there's so much sweetness there, even though things are hard and she has a lot of emotions and all that. And it just there's something lovely seeing those parts of life. And I wouldn't want to be separate from them. I wouldn't want to not get to experience that and like see those little kids testing things out and then like having them run back to me.
I am. But what's that like for us when we hear or visualize this image that Meryl's sharing of this loving grandmother who just knows everything's okay, everything's going to be okay. As this being held, belonging, can we can we how did that image translate for all of us? And then I'm curious for each of us, maybe we should pause. This is so yummy what Meryl said, and to see what's your version of that. Is it like a grandmother? Is it like what represents? Is there a visual image of this self, this okayness, this that kind of reassures our parts by its very beingness that everything's okay, love is here, okayness is here. Let me check and see for um for for Sarah and Goldie if they have one too. Then come back to Meryl. Goldie, do you have an image that's like that for you?
Yeah, that's so beautiful what Meryl said. Like that grandmother love, it's the same intimacy that I said. It's so beautiful when we trust that love or when we trust ourselves as that loving um, safety. So we can always go and explore and enjoy the world. And we always know that there is that love waiting for us. Even if I'm scared, I can go back to that um, grandma's like it's love and be safe there. And then again, go out and experience and come back. It's I mean, every night we are doing that. Every night we are going to ourselves and go to sleep, and we know we are safe with ourselves. We forget about outside, and every morning we wake up and we go explore. Sometimes it's fearful, sometimes it's lovely, but always we know that at night we can go to sleep. We can go back to ourselves, say goodbye to everything else, and be in peace. You know. So I love that. I love what Meryl said. It was really beautiful. Thank
Hmm, wow.
I love
You with
how
no,
Meryl
Sarah.
describes it. Yeah, the grandmother. It's just so sweet. It brought like so much warmth and that feeling of coziness. For me, it's a comforting part that just wants to hold my young ones and just and hug them and hold them and I can feel the comfort when I do this, and I just feel that comforting part, just rocking and holding that little one.
In this comfort, this holding, this grandmother, does does this come and go? This grandmother, this welcoming, this care, this safety. this grandmother that Meryl's speaking of as an expression of the self of this being, this does it come and go, or is this always here? And let's get a little more subtle with this. Do we notice that for some of our parts, they know that this is always here? We know something. We know this grandmother's love, this acceptance, that skirt that just welcomes us and is excited to see us and always welcomes us home and everything's okay, is always here. And we have parts that know that. And then we have other parts that are like, are you crazy? I'm out by myself. This is really scary. And no, I don't see anybody here that's welcoming me. What's that like? And Meryl, we'll just, if there's anything that bubbles, I'm going to come back to you with this since you kind of opened this beautiful door for us. What's it like as far as the presence of this grandmotherly love?
I struggle with it. It's a very new thing for me in the last few years. And so I'm very visual and I need a lot of imagery. So I have to remind myself a lot. And I often, because of this, it's very new for me to sort of trust myself. I often have an image of like a group of grandmothers, like a group of elders that kind of welcome me back. And then sometimes I can get to the space where I'm like among them rather than the little kid. But quite
Mhm.
often it's me going to them. And my parts are a lot of parts are okay with it, but a lot of them are very resistant. I have this very analytical part that's like, that's not real. You're just making that up in your head. Like really you're out here on your own. And so yeah, some parts are good with it. A lot of parts are like suspicious.
Cool. And how about what you said? How about what Meryl said? That sometimes I'm out there amongst them, going to the. I said sometimes I'm amongst the parts, and then sometimes going to them. Sometimes I am amongst them. The sense of the me. Sometimes I am amongst the grandmothers and elders. I am of that welcoming, that love. That's where I am. That's what I am. And then other times, no, I'm kind of out there in the world experiencing being separate and looking for that love. We all relate to that in just IFS. It's just the identification that goes back and forth from parts to self. And that's all self-leader. That's all this thing is about, is this self-leadership, just as it more and more, this sense of identifying more and more as the grandmother, as the self, as the elders. And then we just get, or just the enjoyment of the dance. Oh, wow, I'm a part now looking for the elders. And then, wow, here I am as an elder that's welcoming. Anything else with that, Sarah?
For me, it's
Oh,
um,
no, yeah, go on, sorry. Yeah.
my comforting part. Usually, it's an inner child, a toddler, or an infant. Um, and when I do some unburdening, I always take the little one into my childhood bedroom. It feels like the most safe place for my little ones. And there's always the comforting part. And um, there's a sense of relief when I tell them that they don't have to go anywhere or be anywhere. They can just be here with this comforting part, this mothering part. And they're just held and comforted and just feel safe in that container, in that space, in that room.
I have a question. Yes. That you use the word part for that, for this comforting. And like sometimes sometimes there are parts. We have these parts that are like, oh, great comforting. But then there's also this that doesn't come and go, where the comforting is, where Meryl was speaking of from self. How does it discern that in your system, when it's like a part and when it's from self? You with that, Sarah? And then we'll
I
go back to
see.
Meryl. Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel it that, oh, this is my comforting mothering part, taking care of the little one.
Mm.
And when they're together, my system is peaceful and okay. But when that little one is acting up and coming out, then I realize, oh, that part is not doing the comforting. So the little one is just like out loose, and then I have to be with it Um, and when I'm being with it, then I know, oh, that's me. That's self. I'm being with that part. Um, and the comforting part can then step in and take over, and I just leave them together. Um, so in a sense, my little ones are always comforted by the comforting part, but not by self.
Mm,
Self intervenes only when they really need attention, when they're acting up.
thank you. How about the vividness of Sarah's system? The vividness of it with her parts, the vividness, the clarity and the feeling as she speaks for her parts. Like there's so clear what's happening here. Thank you. Meryl, how you doing with this as we talk more about the grandmother? Anything else but kind of bubbling with this, and maybe we'll go to some conflict. We'll go to some real life conflict next for all of us.
I love hearing other people's perspectives because it just broadens things for me so much. Like when Sarah talks about her comforting parts, I realized, and I don't know, I've never said this out loud to anybody, but I do have these sort of like extra parts that like I remember when I was first introduced to IFS, um, we talked about like if there's something you want to do that's really hard, like go to a family event where you know you're going to have some conflict, but you want to be there for whatever reason to support whoever yourself, and how they would talk about, well, you could leave one part at home, just say you don't need to come. You can stay home and do your puzzles or, watch TV or whatever. And I realize I do have these parts that I almost think of. I'm not a capital R religious person, but I almost think of as angels, where it's like, okay, I have to go to work now. Like I have a part that's having a tantrum and it's afraid about something, but I've got to be in this meeting. And the angels will kind of take that part aside and like kind of take care of her while I do what I need to do. And so I loved that image, Sarah, like that kind of parallel. But I also just love what Goldie said about going to bed, because my whole life I have trouble going to sleep, and I would hate going to bed, and I'd stay up really, really late, and I'd get really, really anxious and couldn't fall asleep. And in the last couple of years, my husband teases me about this, that like my favorite part of the day is going to bed. And I'll get so excited that I get to go to bed that I almost wake myself up. Because that's what I do. I lie down and I picture those grandmothers, and they're there with me, and I'm returning to that like safe place, and I fall asleep, and it's so restoring, and it's I feel like that's like a gift to have, because I never had that before in my life.
What's it like for us to hear Meryl share that about what going to sleep is for her? It's restoring, it's returning to a safe place, going to the grandmothers. Can we find that? Can we find what's most like that in our experience of going to sleep? Find that. I'm really trying to receive that in my system, Meryl, because that's just like, wow, that sounds amazing. And I can have that when I go to sleep. I want to someone really find that and know that. It's so beautiful. And aren't we, like, I also get really excited for Meryl's system and her parts, that they get to have that for her parts. Imagine, like, for her parts, it's like, whoa, it's been a hard day, but wow, we get to, when we go to sleep, we get the good stuff. We get to go home. We get to go to this place of restoring. We get to those places of love and acceptance, these grandmothers. Isn't that exciting that her parts get to have that at the end of every day? They get to come to this. They get to be met by that. And what about our systems and our parts? Isn't what Goli was speaking of this as well? What about for our parts? Is it as viscerally real? What can they find? Can some of our parts find that as well in sleep? I think finally I don't have to work anymore. I can just relax. Oh, I'm being held, nurtured, accepted, loved. Do our parts? Do you have parts that can find that too? And it might be interesting because some some people, including me, have difficulty with sleep. I take sleeping pills sometimes. And when we have difficulty, what's that? What's that? And we find parts that have like the opposite response to going to sleep. It's like, well, something doesn't want to relax, doesn't want to surrender. There's a resistance. Do you have parts that are like that? And if you do, can you see the innocence of those parts? The ones that resist it. One's like, no, there's things I need to do. I need to figure this out. I need to think about this. I don't want to go to sleep. I need to figure this out. Or parts where it's something might be a little scary, the surrendering. Can we see the innocence of that? Can we enjoy that? Welcome that? Anything bubbling about sleep?
Yeah. Yeah, when my parts forget that they cannot exist without myself, then anxiety comes up in me. Like, but when like that grandmother, then loving grandmother, when she reminds the parts that I am here, I am here to protect all of you. I love you all. Come back to me. Just, just, um, just remember that you can trust me. Come back to me. Then the sleep. I think, yeah, before I had difficulty to go to sleep too. But then more and more that I realized that my parts belong to me, and the parts kind of surrendered to me. Then I was able to fall asleep, and I was able to find that peace that is who I am. But first, the parts surrender, kind of like that anxiety that I don't know what to do tomorrow. I should do this, I should do that. For a moment, that part can trust that there is a self taking care of me,
Mm.
even if I don't do any of those. That's okay too. That part doesn't judge, doesn't, not part, that self doesn't judge, accepts me, whatever I am, wherever I am, even if I don't achieve what I think I should achieve. Because, when it realizes that it is dependent to the self, and self is all love and acceptance.
And one thing that jumped out at me, did you hear Gully's use of the word me? And she said, and then the parts, they surrender to me. Anything else bubbling?
I have to say, Sid, when you mentioned trouble falling asleep too, that the best concept that a friend had given me that's made all the difference, she didn't tell me it in this context, but it's how I've used it, is it used to be when I went to sleep, I would try to meditate and I would try to clear my mind, right? And we all know how that goes. And it always felt like I was doing something wrong when I couldn't get the voices to calm down. And then I'd be up for a couple of hours and they'd be chattering and whatever. Um, but the grandmothers are so different. When the voices come up, instead of being like, no, 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 they're like, yes, anxiety, you know? And that was what she told me. She said, just yes to everything. Yes, anxiety. Yes, you are protecting us. Great. Yes, thinking part. You are thinking about that work project. And what's interesting is with no other effort, when I give myself 15 minutes or something to let all those voices play out and say yes to each one, yes, okay, that's a legitimate concern. Who's next? That after 15 or 20 minutes, they quiet down a little. And then the grandmother is just like a real parent say, okay, everyone, it's time to sleep now. Let's count backward from threes, let's and they listen. They listen.
Meryl, thank you so much. I am so taking notes on this because I would love my system to have what you and Goalie are describing, and my parts to get to have that and come home to that every day. Wow. Hmm. How about that for all of us? What Meryl's sharing, the sense of it wasn't a figuring it out, it wasn't a changing, it wasn't a pushing something aside, it wasn't changing our state or diving into self. It was the yes. It was the yes. It was the welcoming. of the parts, the anxiety, the thinker, the yes to them that allowed this to open. Anything else bubbling with sleep? Okay, then I want to add something else. With something that with Sarah and Meryl were talking about their parts. And Sarah was speaking about this comforter part that comes in and comforts the other parts. And Meryl speaks about this angel part that comes in. Can this all be occurring within the field, within the space that self is aware of? Can this, whatever your metaphor is, like the theater stage, the hot tub, the galaxies, planets, whatever it is, that the parts are interacting, the comforter part comes, the angel part comes in, and then there's self, and there's this being, this that's either aware of it or it's the grandmothers, the elders that's there kind of welcoming and loving everything. Or it goes to, where our friend Goalie goes, where even this separation ends up diminishing and everything is just a dance of this. Everything is an expression of this self, these parts, these unburdened parts. Anything bubbling on that before we go to what's next? Okay, then my question is how are you again? It's like between courses. Go to this fancy restaurant. Have you ever done this? I've done this once in my life, this really fancy restaurant. In between courses, they literally bring sherbet. And you have a little orange sherbet, and it's like it clears your palate so you're ready for the next. And so for this, like my version is often, hey, let's dance or flow or let it go, or just asking us like, how are you? And just we just like like notice what's here. We notice our parts and wow, what the thoughts are like, wow, that was so cool. What Meryl was talking about with sleep. And then it was like, or whatever's here, whatever parts are here, the thinker, understanding, achiever, critic, and then the background that's here, the way self is, the beingness that's here right now. There is peace and calm of just here, just flowing, whatever is here. And then I'm thinking just to open the door for a little bit with this whole conflict thing. With if maybe if someone has one that we could, because what I want to suggest, the bridge we're making is that we already have this intrinsic peacemaking ability in us, just as we speak of the grandmothers being here, of self being here. The same is here for real life conflict. And I'm wondering if there's anything that's kind of real for anybody right now as far as a difficult situation. Someone that said something, you don't need to say anybody's name or anything that's difficult in life for us right now that we'd like to look at together. If not, I can make one up, but it's kind of fun. It's like fun when it's a real thing. Yeah.
I have one. I just don't know. It's it feels weird. Being having attention focused on me, but I definitely have one. That's what brought me here.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, but can I share this? That just like as you were talking about sleep, you see like where it was like you were facilitating all of us and you were guiding all of us. And I'll do my best with this, even though you're going to share a conflict situation that brought you here. For me, you're just helping. It's less focusing on you and more like you're kind of helping facilitate all of us and guide us for our own versions of that. And so carry on. What you got, Meryl?
Um, yeah, so I mean the complex stuff that brought me here was that I have this part that sort of comes up and goes down and comes up and goes down and has for years. Um, Ever since my relationship with this person, although I think it probably existed way before then. Where it gets so angry that this person doesn't follow through on things that they say they're going to do. And it gets just livid and it's just like, I don't want to, we got to run away. We can't be near this person. Um, And the part is kind of its own thing because so like even recently the person has been like, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and I promise. And I realize that it's really hard for you when I don't follow through. So this part's even matter. It's like, whatever, don't make more promises. Like it won't even open the door for things changing. Um, and I have other parts that are like, you should talk to this person. You should let them know that part is present and see if they can, hold that part similar for you. Can you hold that part? Can you be okay with that part? But then other parts dive in and they're like, mm-mm, this is not safe. You cannot express yourself, especially to this other person. Um, it will blow up your life. They will be so mad at you. You've been harping on this for years. It's not going to get anywhere to express it anymore. So I constantly shut that part down, or other parts of me shut that part down. And I think that makes it even louder. And so it's this sort of constant tug and pull about like trying to shut it down. Well, no, 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 we got to let it speak, but we've got to cage it so
Uh,
carefully that it's not really
yeah,
getting to speak anyway.
yeah. Wow. Wow. Okay, so this is just Meryl. What she's talking. This doesn't. I don't. This is her story. We don't have parts like this. We don't have situations like this, right? That's a joke. Um,
That's the joke.
we all know this when we just kind of get fed up and we just kind of, and parts of us are just like, this is a lost cause. We can't do this. Don't make yourself vulnerable anymore. And we just so that we can all find that. And then also when it comes to conflict resolution, can we also see where it can become an impossibility to 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 address the conflict with the other person when we've got this aliveness of parts happening inside of us that are loud, right? The last thing we'd want to do is have Meryl, hey Meryl, go kind of work. Why don't you go work this out with him right now? No, no, no. At first, you get to work it out with the precious expressions that are happening inside you. Because eventually, what opens for us when there's just is that we can see the just like what we're about to do to see the innocence of these parts that are happening inside your system and to really enjoy really see if we can welcome them. That has to come first. Because if I say, hey Meryl, can't you see the innocence of your partner's parts? you know I'm guessing these parts would come up like, no way, I'm not even going to look there, I've got that. It's anyway, we as we start inside with these parts that are here, the first question is for all of us, can we as we hear Meryl's parts, can we see them, can we hear them, can we feel them, and can they all be here? I don't know how you visualize this for all of us. Is it like a stage and they're just like actors on the stage, or how we hear these parts? Because my invitation is, can we be aware of them all? Can we open up in such a way that they all can be here? This one that says, no, I just got to run away. I just got to run away. I can't hear this person say, make another commitment. I just got to run away. And just to notice that part as we hear it in Meryl, where do we imagine that one shows up? Is it like a little part off where you even see it kind of walking away or running away in the distance? How do we see that? Where do we feel that part in Meryl? Where does that show up in your system, Meryl? And then the other side of this, there's this one that says, no, we should talk to them. We should talk to them. We should share what's going on here. If this could be heard, something can really change. Where do we imagine that part in Meryl's system in this space? Where does that one show up? I think there's a vulnerability, and I'm not sure if that's a real vulnerable one or if it's kind of a wise one that sees the big picture. Like, how does that translate for us, of each of us, as we hear that in Meryl? And Meryl, just to notice where that part is. When this, we should talk about this. We should share what's really here. And then In response, you said there was almost like a chorus of parts. I was hearing there were a few parts that then respond to that one and say, no way, that's not safe. There's no way we're going to do that. And like, where do you find that chorus of parts that just say, no way? Where do we hear that in Meryl? Are they in the background? Are they kind of under? Where are those? Okay. And this is, and then there's the shift of if you, as we've got these kind of three parts or this group of parts and these two others, right? Notice as we talk about these, is attention moving from one to the other? Or are we able to kind of zoom out and like, wow, they're all playing here. They're all in this theater in front of me. They're all in this space. They're all in the hot tub, whatever your metaphor is. See if you can zoom out. Sometimes in this, sometimes we, but if you're having difficulty seeing, if you're having difficulty being aware of them all at any time, there's a little trick that's sometimes helpful. I call it the two thumbs. If you're aware of your two thumbs and you kind of let them open and you stay aware of them, you stay aware of them as they open, and then they go behind you. And if you're still aware of them, it's a shifting. It shifts from this attention to this place of awareness. And this is where we want to be here. As we're aware of our parts, it's also a way of abiding as self. If we can be aware of the thumbs behind us, it helps us hold to the space of self. And then we're aware of these parts. Just for all of us, as we're doing this with Meryl. And then from here, let's check in, Meryl. How's it going so far? How's this translating?
Good. It's funny. Sometimes I sort of like blank out. Like everyone's like, "Ah, ah, this too much." Almost like I can't control my brain enough to even like do the image of the thumbs. Like it takes a lot of centering to not just have like the noises, like in physics class when the noises overlap and it becomes quiet, they're like all yelling and it's just shut down. Um, so it takes
How,
effort to
so
kind of
how
stay
about that?
present.
I just want to love that. I love the too much. When are we? We only have 25 minutes of this. Maybe we can just go and have goalies speak about the big space or something. It's like and it's like, but the one that closes, the one that says enough, too much, I can't keep. How about that? Like, is that part of problem? Notice from the grandmothers, from self, it's not a problem, right? It's just another precious expression here. One that says too much, shut down. Like, can it be welcomed? This in this theater that we're in with the three parts, and then we have this other one that says too much. Can it be welcomed? How are we doing now, Meryl? What are you finding? We're not going anywhere. We're interested in you. We're interested in how life is moving in you. There's no objective. We don't have to get anywhere or do anything. We're just like becoming fascinated with how this is all playing in you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the part that wants to shut things down, first it gets it brings in this like brainy part and it's like, this could be capital T trauma. So you can only touch it and then you got to go back and you touch it and you go back. You can't stay in it. That's too dangerous. Um, but then there's this much more there's like a deeper feeling that there is a part or parts that are very afraid of um, shift. Like that there's the optimistic part that like, oh my gosh, if you can really start welcoming these parts and letting them be present and that you could really shift and like find some relief, find more centering, more awareness of self. But there are other parts that are terrified of that because they don't know what that looks like. And there are very specific parts that are like, we cannot risk blowing up any relationships. We have so few relationships and support, or that's what it feels like that, they're like, it's too risky to go there.
Awesome. Awesome. So sometimes we call this group like it's a party, it's a parts party. Sometimes it's a parts party. And like, can we see that with Meryl's precious system with all the parts? It's like the ones that are like, the one that wants to shut it down. The one's like, well, we have to be really careful here with because it might be touching trauma. You can just touch it, but you can't get too close to it. Another one that talks about the shift. Oh, shifting, the possibility of shift. Really cool. Other ones like shift, no way, we're not doing that. And there's the other one that wants to run away. The chorus is the chorus that says no way, and the one that says yes, we should talk, we should be open. Can it be a party, a celebration of how life is moving in her? All of this, all of these parts, nothing that needs to be done. It's like, wow, look at that. And this is again the gift of Meryl sharing this for us, because it's much easier in my experience to find that party, to find that celebration, that fascination with the system and someone else's system than our own. And if we can find this enjoyment of Meryl's system, the enjoyment of her parts, just as they are, all of them just as they are, that can be the big shift in our system, if we can, because it can make it easier to find it. And then, whoa, can we really find that in our own system? The sense of enjoyment of what is. How you doing, Meryl?
All right, it's funny. My parts are onto you. They're like, yeah, exactly. Like if we try to enjoy this, if we try to step back from this, that's precisely the shift we're afraid of. And so like, we got to stop that. We got like mad parts and manager parts and whatever that come in. They're like, nah, it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous. And I almost perceive it as like the parts of me that are very convinced that certain relationships, this relationship is like the only thing that sustains me emotionally. Um, they, it's almost like it's just such a new concept for me that there's something bigger that sustains me. There's that self, there's that connection to whatever that self has. They are just very mistrustful of that. So it's like a roadblock sometimes.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. As when we hear Meryl speak of this part, that's like, no, this relationship sustains me. This is where I get my resourcing or whatever is found here. And it's just like we can't risk that. Can't risk that. As we hear her speak of this part, speak for this part, do we all just love and adore this part that's looking out for her? This part that's looking out for her. This is, we got to be careful here. This is really precious. This is really important. And then as we hear Meryl speak of trauma, the possibility of, hey, we need to be careful here. This is a vulnerable human being here, even though we can talk about the big spiritual thing and the grandmothers, there's something vulnerable here in all of us. We need to be careful. We don't want to re-traumatize. We don't want to get caught in the trauma. As we hear that, and that just be appreciated and welcomed and loved. And perhaps can we find expression of that in our own systems? The carefulness. Just like I said, I am not going to that part that had its heart broken by the woman that broke up with me. I'm not going to go to the one that was bullied. I'm not ready. I don't want to touch that right now. I don't want to go into that. I don't want to get caught back in that right now. My system's not ready for that. And just like to appreciate that. And then I want to just share a trick again. I want to share a trick again. And this is the heart of effortless IFS, because in IFS, some of us say that we only can suffer when we're blended with a part. Suffering only occurs, not pain occurs in experience, but the suffering only occurs from blending with a part. And to blend with a part, it has to kind of identify with that part. And that's what we're speaking of here in the shift, in the thumbs, and the being aware of two or more parts at the same time is one of the reasons we try to stay with that. It becomes very difficult to blend and identify with one part if we're aware of two or more. And that's part of the game we're playing with. And I'm just sharing that just to perhaps to speak to parts that are scared of re-traumatizing, of getting caught in the trauma, that it's included in this game here, very much an awareness of that. That's why in classic IFS, where we do focus on one part at a time, there's always a going to the protectors first and making sure, is it okay? Is it safe to go here? We don't do that here because we're not doing this efforting of going to a part. Instead, we are being the grandmothers, this awareness, this yes, this welcoming. and we don't push. There's no agenda here. There's a welcoming. How are we doing? Let me just check in with Goalie and Sarah on this. We've got like 16 minutes left. We'll see where we're able to go with all of this today. What's here?
Can I share something? I just like what Mira said was I felt her so much because my experience with that was so intense that I was killed by that because I had that problem with one of my relationships, and it was so intense that it would shut down everything in me. And once the most like intense one was when I had that very fresh in my mind. I had that fight and like telling myself, why did I trust him again? And I was driving. All my body was shut down, and the car went to the wall. I was almost killed. So it was very, very intense. I can feel you really. Mm, What helped me a lot in general, and including that, was once I had been I was able to step back and see that these are all in my mind. I am fighting with that person in my mind. I have some expectations in my mind, and I realized that he has a mind too. His mind is totally different than mine. When I realized that it is always going on in my mind, um, it was like I had the power then. I had the power to make myself separate than the thoughts and see them. Um, if they were all there to protect me, not to protect me, to protect the image that I made from myself and from that person. And for sure, he had the same thing too. And totally different world. We all have different worlds. We are living in different worlds. When I found that, I was able to be more. I'm not saying that it was all gone, but I was able not to be identified with that feelings. So it was a little bit less, like it was a little bit less in my body, in my mind, in my life. The peace was more, little by little, it got more. But then I was able to decide whether if for me, it was not resulted to just cut the relationship altogether, but it changed my perspective. And then his perspective, because it's like two, um, I don't know how to say it, it's like somebody throw the ball, there's a wall in front of it. It just touched the ball and comes back. It's like this. We were like throwing balls together. But when I realized that, I was able to remove the wall. So that ball could just come, but it would go. It wouldn't touch me that much. It was not like altogether gone, but little by little, it was just less and less.
What's that like? Here we Goalie's just given us this opening to see her precious system. And she walked us through this experience with this partner and how her system was reacting and responding, and then how she got space from her parts, from her thoughts. Space opened, it became less identified, they become aware of, and how that opened, and how get space from resistance. And we're just hearing how it played in her system. And it can be a real gift in this, right? Because as we start to hear others describe, as we hear Merrill's and then we hear Goalies, and it's like, wow, it's just this precious humanness of playing with this, identifying with our thinking, identifying with our parts. Whoa, and now there's more space. Sarah, anything for you?
I it really touched me, and yeah, I had parts that were a little bit activated, um, and I could relate to everything that was shared. Um, And for me, it's it's two parts that came up. Um, a part that wants to end the pain. Um, it kind of takes over, um, and it can take over in a split of a second. And then an accident happens. Um, and I would be wondering, how did this happen? And then I realized, oh, it's that part. It's trying to stop the pain. Um, so the system will kind of go into like a trance. Like I wouldn't know what happened, how it happened. It just happens. Um, yeah, and so yeah, so that there's that part, and there's the other part um, that completely shuts down my dissociative part, where I feel like I'm looking at my body, but I'm not in it. So I don't really know what's the experience that's happening. Um, maybe some loss of memory, maybe um, just being not in touch with the feelings. And these two parts they come up in conflict or in really um, heightened situations. And I do see them like they're protectors that just want to protect and take care of the system, and um, and they have good intentions. One wants to stop the pain, the other wants me not to feel anything, and they're both just so loving and caring, and they don't know better. They're just innocent. Um, and once I see their intentions and I feel gratitude, they they don't come up as much. They're less and less in the background, and they just disappear. Um, so yeah, and I'm just grateful for these parts, and I see them, and I know what they're doing. And I kind of even forgot about uh, one of them, but yeah, today I remembered. Oh, it's that part. Yeah, because I've had a few accidents that I didn't know why did that happen. Oh, that part. And it's just our systems are amazing, you know. Yeah.
Sarah, these two parts. I hope you'll bring them up again and again in our groups because it's so clear the way you're able to speak of this. One that wants to stop the pain, one that wants doesn't want to feel anything. I just think we all know these so well, and I'm guessing that even today they've been coming. I can definitely find them here. And I just love your clarity about those two. Thank you. I'm really kind of bummed out that this is happening. This is opening up for all of us at the very end of today instead of at the very beginning with what Meryl opened up for us. I want to come back to Meryl in just a minute. But then with the goalie, how are you with what you shared? That was just like, especially with the car accident and sharing that to us. That was just there was so much you shared with us in this and how this is playing in you. What's there now?
It was 20 years ago. So like I had a lot of time to change my perspective, disidentify with those parts and go back. But yeah, like now it's now I understand that all these parts are there to protect the vision we made for ourselves. That when they that it's a kind of, you can say, illusion, because it can change dramatically. It can be something to, I mean, like in 20 years, one person can just become totally another person. So that identity that we made for ourselves is very changeable. It's not something permanent. I am the one who is staying there is permanent and can, but this understanding that everything is there to protect us, even
Mm,
as Sarah said, what shuts your body down is just to protect you, not to feel, to make you numb, not to feel that pain. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Wow. So there's so much on the table that we've opened up to. And then I'm like, Meryl, why didn't you start with this at the very beginning? We should have started with like minute one with this because I feel like we're just like we've only got 6 minutes left and we're just starting like the depths in which we could go with what you've shared. We've just started it. But I just want to ask, how are your parts doing? How are you doing right now? Because there's a real vulnerability in everything you shared with us. And I'm most of all in these groups, I'm wanting it to be like gentle, loving pairing. And especially when we end, I'm wanting it to be like a gentle landing for all of our parts. And how are you doing now? What's going on?
Um, I, I'm very appreciative. Like I do find it super interesting that just speaking in a certain way with people that you don't know well can be deeper and more helpful and more safe feeling sometimes than talking to people you've known for 20 years because you speak in a different way or because you have different kinds of relationships. But also just hearing from both of you, all three of you, um, is incredibly helpful. And I have so much compassion. Like when I see someone else expressing, like Goli, when you were talking about it, it is easier sometimes to separate from other people's parts, even if they look just like yours, and have that incredible compassion. I find that very helpful. I find it, I'm like jittery now, like, okay, now I go back to the real world, what's going to happen? But I appreciate all of you.
I love that line. When I go back to the real world, what's going to happen? You know, and it's just like I love the familiarity with it because when I step out, I'm gonna go visit my father from here, and it's like it'll just be what'll happen. It'll be my parts that'll be coming up and respond. And it's like, oh, I know those. And then I want to come back to and how your system's doing, Meryl, because you spoke of all of these parts and the relationship, the fear, the like wanting it to change, the thing is stuck, the shift would be good. Oh, shift would be horrible. I wouldn't want to do that. And it's like all of that. And does it feel kind of safe and okay in this moment? Or do you have parts that are like, whoa, we might have said too much here? Like how's your system doing? We're wanting to gently support whatever's here.
Um, it's interesting. I'm both like I came in, I'm optimistic and I'm trepidatious. I'm trying to be curious about what happens next and trying and like true like effortless IFS style to kind of see what happens next instead of trying to sit down and make a plan. Like, okay, how am I going to deal with this? And instead try to, maybe kind of sit with myself for a little bit before I leave my closet.
Nice. Well, and just say you're not here by yourself, right? We've got this the self, the grandmother's this love, this acceptance, this yes to the part that you've shared that can happen inside your own system. And you have us with you. We got, Sid, Sarah, and Goli that have just been so touched by these parts. And there's just this yes from us, this welcoming, this fascination of wow, aren't they sweet? Listen to how the ways they're taking care of Meryl. And there's just that just the invitation is the parts that there's an awareness of all of this acceptance, this care, this support, this love, this curiosity and welcoming that's here.
I realize I think I cry when I come to these groups because I feel seen in a way that I've almost never felt seen.
Nice, isn't it, what we get to be for each other? Because Sarah's just, hey, I'm just peaceful and calm and here. But like the gift of Sarah being here is huge, right? It's the gift of wow, she's seeing these parts in Meryl. She's welcoming, she's loving these parts in Meryl, and like how nice it is for each of us, for our parts, when we get to be seen and appreciated and enjoyed just for how we are and who we are and what's here. We've got 2 minutes left. Anything else bubbling that you're wanting to share, Meryl?
Only that it's funny. I had this part on my shoulder the whole time that was like, oh, but what about Sarah? What about Goalie? Like, don't they have more they want to say? Like, don't take up all the real estate. Like, So they were feeling very like protective of you all as well, just sort of like, I
Oh,
want you to get what you need.
let's give our final
Interesting.
two minutes then to Goli and Sarah, so everything can be shared.
No, I really enjoyed this session, like always. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, really.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, and especially thank Mariel for opening up all these ways to go. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Maybe next time we can start with trauma.
Exactly, exactly.
Hi everyone. Let's talk about trauma.
Sarah, will you remind me, please? Remind me, please. Like, okay, who's got a good one for us? Because it's like, even though at first we heard Meryl's like, oh, I don't want to take the attention or be here, but it was really like it was like she was taking us all there into this depth and this exploration, and we saw where it touched the goalie and sharing hers, and so I love that. Please, yeah, Sarah, if you remember, it's closure time, and also, as always, Meryl, if there's anything that comes up, just like message me on face. You can do a voice message to me on Facebook, or you can send me an email. Just that we're all in this together. We're all like, Ram Dass said, we're walking each other home, all of us, and it's just that. And so, thank you, everybody. What a sweet Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good
you.
weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.